How would you like to make $150,000 worth of sales in your business in a 3-month period? In today's episode of the podcast, I'm sharing with you that not only is it possible, but it is possible for you. And today I'm going to break down how. Welcome to today's episode of the podcast, where we're going to be talking about planning your $150,000 sales quarter. The reason I decided to create this episode is that recently I hosted a free masterclass on this exact topic, which is how to plan a $150,000 quarter. And it was so well received by both the people that signed up for it and those that came along live that I thought that I would share it here to the podcast in a slightly different format, but delivering similar content because I really want you to have a really successful year in your business. And if you aren't hitting those $50,000 months in your business yet, we're going to chat about a framework to support you to get there. So let's get back to the foundations of how to grow your business sales. The key to nailing it when it comes to your sales is to have a compelling offer at the right price point and have an audience who are ready and willing to buy. So I'm going to take the assumption that you have the demand, that you have an audience who are ready and willing to buy from you, who have the problem, that you have the solution that you are going to deliver through your product or service. So how do you actually grow your sales? There are two key ways. The first way is that you increase the volume of product that you're selling. And the second way is that you increase your price point. So let's spend a bit of time talking about pricing your products or services. Because when I talk about price increases, a lot of times people get their heckles up. And there's a lot of perception about what premium pricing can mean. And people are worried about how people will perceive them if they are charging a premium price. So let's go back to the early days of bartering. What used to happen is that people would trade their products with other people. So, for example, someone might have access to a running water supply, and another person might have a farm and have chickens. And so, what might happen is that the person who has the water might want a chicken to eat, and the person with the chickens needs some water to drink. And so, these two parties might come together and say, hey, I think that 1 gallon of your water is worth one of your chickens. And they might negotiate a bit and they would reach a point which each party thinks is a fair value exchange and they would trade. Now, that is how it used to work in the old days. And now we have currency, we've got money. And it's essentially the same thing. We are always doing a value trade, whether you are walking into a grocery store, whether you are buying a product or service for your business, or whether you are hiring people to work for you. There is always that question, do I see the value? Do I perceive the value in the price point at which this is? Or is there someone else or something else that I can use my money for instead? We're always making that decision. And the truth is, what some people perceive to be a ridiculous, expensive, completely ridiculous price, other people might not even think twice about. I remember one day, bless my granny, her whole life lived on the poverty line. And I remember I was chatting to her on the phone before she passed away. And she said to me, Claire, love, can you believe the price of asparagus? Now, uh, I wouldn't really notice unless asparagus was like $10 a tin. I probably wouldn't notice if it was $3 or if it was $5 because to me, that's not a material amount of money. Whereas to my granny, she'd really notice the increase in a tin of asparagus. And at a more extreme level, we all have an amount that is a material or significant amount of money to us. Perhaps for you to invest $1,000 for an hour of someone's time is completely reasonable. You think, I'm paying for a specialist, I want their help. Of course, I recognize there's going to be a premium price for that. Whereas other people might think, there's no way I would pay that for an hour of someone's time. We are always making value judgments around the price of something. And there's going to be some things for me at this age and stage in my life. Maybe this will change. But for example, I just can't see the value in paying $4, $5, $10,000 for a handbag. I don't even really have a handbag that I use. It's not something that's important to me. Whereas I completely recognize and appreciate to some people that having a beautiful bag is a representation of something that they really love and desire. It makes them feel good about themselves and they are more than happy to pay a premium price for a beautiful handbag. And then there are other things that I willingly hand over money for. One of them constantly being my personal development. I will go and spend $5,000, $10,000 on a session with someone who I really value their input. If I can see the possible return, if that is something for me, I love to invest in my self-development and my future capability to earn. Whereas I know that other people really struggle to even buy a $500, $1,000 course. I don't think twice about spending a couple of $1,000s on a course, whereas I wouldn't spend that on a bag, if that makes sense. So I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but the point that I'm trying to make is that everyone is always evaluating the worthiness of things and saying, is that worth the money that it says? Someone is always evaluating, is this, in my opinion, worth that amount of money? And they are then saying, yes, let's do that value exchange. Or they are saying, let's don't. So I've created this thing, which is called the Robin Hood theory. Okay, hear me out. If you aren't familiar, Robin Hood used to take from the rich and give to the poor. Now, I am not at all suggesting that you should gouge in terms of your pricing, that you should definitely not saying that you should steal or do anything to rip people off. However, one of the ways that we are able to actually help people who perhaps aren't able to invest at the same level as other people is to create products or services at a price point that is more accessible to them because they are making a higher level of margin in other areas of their business. Now, I personally do this in my own business. I've got my high-end offers, my VIP days, my private coaching. I have a middle of the range offer, which is my courses. I also have been able to use some of the profits from those higher margin areas of my business to invest into things that make me very little or no money. Some of these things I absolutely run at a loss for. An example of this is my book. So my book, Intentional Profit, if you haven't got it yet, go and grab a copy of it. But my book, Intentional Profit, usually retails around $30. For $30, I give so much value inside that book. I feel really confident that if you read my book and you went and took the actions at the end of each chapter, that you would grow your business profit. And I'm giving it away for $30. The way I was able to create a low cost product like that because of the profit in other areas of my business. There are other things in my business that are free that cost me money. An example of this very podcast. It costs me money to produce a podcast. I pay my podcast editor, shout out Dan Sugars, thank you. I pay my beautiful assistant, Sally, who edits the videos for my podcast. Sally also creates reels off the back of it. She writes the transcriptions so that people who have a hearing impairment or perhaps who just like to learn in a different way can also access the content inside this podcast. I create social tiles around it. I invest in an email marketing system that gets it out to you. I invest in a program that allows me to load this podcast onto various platforms for you to listen to. Podcast costs me money. And off the actual podcast, I, at this stage, do not make money directly off the podcast. It costs me money to produce every episode. So you can see how the Robin Hood theory works is that, you can have areas of your business that you have a higher margin or a higher price point, and it actually is helping you to create impact or create offerings that can serve more people. So maybe that might help you to alleviate some of the guilt and shame if that is something that's coming up for you when I talk about having a premium priced product. Another example of this, a beautiful client of mine that I worked with for quite a while as a private coaching client, she runs a tutoring business. And when I first spoke to her about having a more premium price on her tutoring, she felt a lot of guilt and shame around it because she was helping kids who perhaps had a learning disability or perhaps who were struggling. And a couple of things that I shared with her at the time. Firstly, I said, okay, let's talk about the demographic of people that are coming in. And she soon realized that everyone was coming in with their designer label handbags. They were driving, all the fancy cars. And she realized that the slight price increase that we were talking about wasn't going to bankrupt any of them. Secondly, as we forecast her increased profitability, I said to her, hey, do you know what you can do? You can go and find some people who really need your help and are absolutely not in a place to invest to work with you and do some pro bono work, some pro bono tutoring. And that felt really beautiful and expansive and abundant to have these kids that never would have been able to afford to access private tutoring, who were now able to through the new structure that she created. Knowing full well that the people who are, paying a premium price didn't even bat an eyelid. In the time we worked together, she put her prices up multiple times. She said not one single person left. No one even commented. Now, I'm just throwing this out here. I'm not saying that premium pricing is the solution to all of your problems or the only way that you can hit a 150K quarter. I'm just putting it forward as a suggestion. Is it time to revisit your pricing across your products and services? Or is it time to consider having a premium price offering? Just to remind you, I just want to go a little bit deeper on this mindset stuff here. Because again, I know the resistance is going to come up and people will say, well, why would clients want to pay me a premium price? Now, in some areas of my life, I'm really happy to pay a premium. In other areas, not so much. And you might think, I'm never happy to pay a premium price, but I bet you are. And let me share some examples. Have you ever paid for convenience? Have you ever gotten Uber Eats? Because let me tell you, do you know that you can walk to the supermarket, buy food for a cheaper price, cook it yourself, wash your dishes, and it's a lot cheaper than Uber Eats? And you might think, Claire, but I don't know, but then I've got to go to the shops, I've got to cook, I've got to clean. See, you might be happy to pay a premium price for convenience. Another example, sometimes people love to pay for prestige. The reality is if you are driving a fancy car, I mean, to a certain point, there is a significant difference in the safety and a few things like that. But once you get past a certain point, here in Australia, once you get to the $50,000 price point when it comes to cars, there really isn't a whole lot of variation, in my opinion. I'm not a cars person, right? But a lot of it is that people like to pay for prestige. I've shared on the podcast that, we used to own a BMW. And you're paying for like the leather, the nicer seats. You're paying for the logo. Some people love to pay for the prestige experience. Customization. Some people are happy to pay a premium price for a bespoke solution. So I myself this week invested in a couple of things. Invested to do a session with someone about my Instagram account. And, it wasn't cheap, the investment, but, and she's actually got programs. She's got a membership that I could have gone and done for a fraction of the price. But for me, I wanted her to come and look at my profile and give me some tailored advice. Similarly, with my business, I work with a one on one business coach. And she has a ton of courses that I could go and do. They're a lot cheaper instead. But I want to get her feedback about my specific business. I'm happy to pay a premium price for customization. And other times you might pay a premium price for saving time. So perhaps you prefer to catch a taxi instead of waiting for public transport. Maybe you pay someone to help you around the house, to like a cleaner, for example. How does all this relate and translate to you and hitting your 150K quarter? Let's have a think about if it feels aligned, if a premium offer is right for you and your business. I want to throw just a couple of ideas out there. The first one, can you offer a VIP day? I have my VIP days where we get together in person. It is a really premium experience. We go to a beautiful location. I get my hands right into your business. We have a look at your numbers, at your sales, at your marketing. We talk about your mindset blocks. It is tailored, it is bespoke, and it is a premium experience. We also go and have a beautiful high-end meal after our day together. What is something that you could offer like that? And you might think, who wants to do that with me? You'd be surprised. There are people in your audience who would love to pay to pick your brains for a day. If you're an introvert, you can do this in any way you want. One of my closest friends, Steph Taylor, she's a big introvert, unlike me. I love to meet people. But Steph does hers where she spends an hour on Zoom with someone. And then the day, she spends an entire day mapping out a business strategy for you, which she then sends to you later. So perhaps that's something that you could try in your business. Another example is that people are often happy to pay a premium price for speed or a faster turnaround. My website took me so freaking long, like at least 12 months to get it up and loaded. And if I knew there was an option to make that happen sooner, and even if it cost me more money, I would have been happy to pay it. So if there's perhaps a wait list to work with you, or maybe it normally takes, a couple of weeks to get your services up and running, if there's a way you could say, hey, I can do it for you faster, but it's going to cost you, I guarantee you there are people who would be happy to pay a premium price for that. And the last way that you can add a premium offering is keeping your existing service, but adding luxury touches. So let me share an example of this. One of my clients used to run, or she does run. One of my clients ran a Pilates studio. And I said to her, as someone who's done Pilates, I said, one of my big pain points was remembering to bring my Pilates socks and my water bottle and having to carry them. I can't remember the story, but at the time, basically, I had to walk there. It was a bit of a pain lugging these things around. And I said, if there was a way that I could pay to have my chilled water bottle there and to have a pair of socks that were laundered for me there, I'd be happy to pay more for that. So that was something that she introduced. She also introduced a one-on-one, bespoke, tailored training sessions for people, again, who are happy to pay a premium price. So take a moment and think about your clients. Think about their pain points and check in. Is there something I could do at a higher price point as a premium service? So when you have come up with what that looks like, you can play around with your 150K quarter offering. What you might do is say, okay, I could do one VIP day a month, a fortnight. I could charge 10 grand, 5 grand, 2 grand, whatever the price is. You can then start to stack this into your 150K quarter offering. How many of these could I realistically do? What would that do to my current sales? You get to play around with stacking this up. The other option that I spoke about at the start is, of course, increasing your volume. Now, if this is the path that you want to go down, again, take some time and have a bit of a think about, firstly, what kind of volume would you need to be turning over to hit whatever your quarter target is? So let's say it's 150. How many of your products or services would you need to sell in a 3-month period to hit that sales target of yours? And from there, you can reverse engineer. What are the investments that I would need to make to support that kind of volume growth? So let's just say that you are a social media manager. I love to use that example because I tend to work with a lot of creatives in my business. Let's say you're a social media manager, and at the moment you're working like a dog. You are posting all these people's socials for them, you're managing Facebook ads, and you're doing it all on your own. And after listening to this episode of the podcast, you think, I'm ready for a level up. And you decide that you want to take on more clients. But to do that, what you might need to do is consider hiring new staff or investing in a new system that automates some of the work so that you do have bandwidth to take on more clients if the volume route is the route you want to go down. So, whichever path you want to go down, I want to empower you and remind you that you can significantly shake up your business. It's your business. And if you want to make more money, you are in the driver's seat to make that decision. I want to encourage you to go away, play around with your offer stack, and also having a look at the volume versus price and say, how many of that would I need to do to hit my sales goal? Preferably at least $150,000 for the quarter if that does feel aligned for you at this stage in your business journey. One final thing that I do want to say, don't forget that everything I've spoken about today is sales, not profit. So just because you hit a $150,000 sales quarter or $150,000 month or $150,000 year, whatever it might be, what the most important metric that matters is your profit, because that is the money you actually get to keep after your expenses. And this is why I bang on and on and on about the importance of knowing your numbers, because you can have $1 million a year business and still be bloody broke. So make sure that you are keeping your eye right across those numbers. And I'm going to be sharing more on the podcast about how you can do that in the not too distant future. So to wrap up today, if you are wanting to step into a new income level, the trick is to have a compelling offer at the right price, selling to the right audience who want your thing. And you can do that. You can increase your sales by either increasing your volume or increasing your price point. If you are wanting support to go and take some of the concepts that we've spoken about today, or perhaps you're struggling with your mindset, structuring your team, hiring the right team, I would love to extend the opportunity to you now to reach out and find out more about what it looks like to work with me one-on-one as your coach. I take on a very limited number of private coaching clients at a time, but inside this is a fully supported container for multiple 6-figure business owners who are wanting to scale to the 7-figure mark. You can come and have a look at the link that I'm going to share in the show notes and see some of the case studies of what my clients have been able to achieve over the years. And if it's feeling aligned to you, I would love to invite you to reach out and find out more about what it might look like to work together. I also offer, as I've mentioned in today's training, VIP days, which are an immersive one-on-one, really bougie experience. And again, I'll share the link to find out more about that in the show notes for today's episode. But for now, I want to say a huge thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And I hope this has inspired you to get out there and to grow your sales.